Did you hear about the mad Gasser of Mattoon? This one's weird. The internet says it's true. Hi, and welcome to The Internet Says It's True, where every week we learn something that sounds like I made it up, but it's really true. Part of the WCBE podcast. My name is Michael Kent. Thanks for coming back. I hope you didn't miss me too bad since last week. There are lots of new listeners lately. As I told you last week, the show recently broke into the top 100 in history, and that is thanks to you. So I appreciate so much everyone coming in every week to learn a new topic, and I'd be a horrible podcast host if I didn't take this opportunity to invite you to become a Tizator. You can join the fun stuff happening over there at Patreon. It's now including a new monthly online meetup. We're going to do that, and it's going to be a blast. But also, you get every episode early and ad-free. You get the videos of the guest interviews, tons of extra, including access to my show, Joke Story Trick. That's patreon.com/Michael Kent to join up. Super easy, and it costs however much you want it to cost, from $1 on up. Pretty much the best value since they stopped putting Beanie Babies in Happy Meals. Patreon.com/Michael Kent is where you sign up. Hope to see you there. Later on in the show, we're going to be joined by my friend, comedian and screenwriter Jay Black, one of my absolute favorite guests to have on the show. But first, let's dive into this story. It was the mid-1940s, and something was stinky in the town of Mattoon, Illinois. Mattoon, Illinois is not a large city. It's only about 16,000 residents. And there's not a whole lot to see there, just a typical small Midwestern town. I've been there. There's a college, Lakeland College, where I've performed, and I remember being there. But in 1944, it was the site of some strange attacks. They've been described as several names: the anesthetic prowler, the phantom anesthetist, and most famously, the mad Gasser of Mattoon. There's a headline from the front page of Mattoon's newspaper, the Journal-Gazette. It describes a strange attack from the anesthetic prowler. The story described what was the very first of these strange attacks to be reported. Aileen Kearney woke up smelling something strong in her bedroom. Her husband was away on work, and her sister and nephew were in her home, staying with her and her 2 young children. This odor was so strong that she could smell it inside the house, but assumed it was coming from outside. She described it as a sweet smell, almost like flowers. The smell kept getting stronger and stronger, and soon she found herself unable to move, temporarily paralyzed from the waist down. She screamed for her sister, and despite opening the bedroom window and looking out, they couldn't find the source of the smell. When Aileen's husband finally returned home later that night, he found a man looking into the windows. He was described as a tall man, wearing dark clothes and a, quote, tight-fitting cap. Once the story was reported, others started coming forward. One of them was a husband and wife who reported the same experience. Urban Rafe and his wife had been the victims of a similar experience the night before Aileen Kearney. It was 3 a.m, and they reported strong fumes and temporary paralysis. In the beginning of that September, there were 4 of these cases reported in the paper. Some of the victims had even been children, who became extremely ill after smelling the fumes. Immediately, stories started circulating as to what was causing this smell throughout town. Many people blamed one of the several industrial plants in town, the Atlas Imperial Diesel Engine Company. The police chief had mentioned that the smell they were smelling was most likely carbon tetrachloride, but Atlas issued a statement denying that the smell was coming from them, as they didn't have enough of the chemical on site to produce that smell. They did mention that they had a large amount of trichloroethylene on hand, but doubted that was the cause of the smell, as every plant producing warm materials at the time was using those same chemicals, and other communities would be reporting the same smell. So the mystery continued. For at least 2 weeks, victims in Mattoon were reporting a strange smell followed by dizziness, coughing, nausea, and temporary paralysis of the legs. No one died, but citizens were scared. At least 26 people had been affected. So what was going on? Was it just mass hysteria? Or was there really a mad Gasser terrorizing the citizens of Mattoon? We'll talk about that after a quick break.
Click here now to follow WikiListen, the podcast where we read Wikipedia pages.
Some pages are fascinating.
Licking is the action of passing the tongue over a surface.
I'm disgusted. Some pages are funny.
The male spider mounts the posterior portion of the female's abdomen while rubbing his spinnerets. Spinnerets on her abdomen.
Some pages are straight up shocking. Is considered offensive and vulgar.
What? Go to wikilisten.com.
If you love listening to this podcast every week and you want to show your support, that would mean a great deal to me. You can do that by becoming a Patreon member. We've got members at all levels, whether you want to pledge $1 a month or $10 a month. Just think about the value that you receive from this show. And if you like the histories and the stories that you learn about or the jokes that you hear, and if you think that they're worth it, consider signing up. For that, you get every episode ad-free and a week early, access to bonuses like the unedited videos of the guest appearances, and 20% off all merchandise. You can sign up today at patreon.com/Michael Kent. That's patreon.com/Michael Kent. There was a time that humans used 100% organic products as healing balms and moisturizers for their skin. Well, I've partnered with an awesome company that wants to get back to those times. Fatco sells organic and responsibly made tallow-based skincare products. For centuries, humans used tallow in skin moisturizers and healing balms, but unfortunately, the topical application of these fats seemed to stop around the same time that animal fats stopped being considered part of a healthy diet. A lot of modern skincare products do more harm than good by stripping your skin of its natural oils. Let's change that. You can try them out now at fatco.com and get 15% off your order by using my promo code INTERNET. Go to theinternetsaysitstrue.com/deals for the link. As citizens were panicking about the possibility of being poisoned by something in the Mattoon, Illinois air, the FBI came to town and began investigating. There were very few clues. One clue was a small white cloth that had been left outside Carl and Beulah Cord's house. She had been a victim of the foul smell and had become violently ill. She said it felt like an electric shock. There was also a small, worn skeleton key and an empty tube of lipstick. It's unknown whether or not these clues had anything to do with the attack. When Aileen Kearney had smelled the smell, she thought maybe it was the first step to a robbery. They had a large amount of money in the home. Similarly, Carl and Beulah Cords thought that it was an attempted robbery and hypothesized that the white cloth held some sort of chemical that was meant to knock out their dog. After these attacks, the Mattoon police were inundated with reports of attempted attacks. Everything from prowlers to cut window screens to suspicious footprints around homes to just unknown figures walking around in neighborhoods. The description even changed from a man to a woman at one point, to a buzzing machine and a blue vapor. At this point, the police strongly believed they were looking at mass hysteria. Maybe something happened, maybe there were some initial attacks, but now the community was on alert. Remember, this was 1944, the middle of the war, when everyone was already on edge. They thought maybe it was the Nazis testing chemical weapons. Yes, in Mattoon, Illinois. The community formed a vigilante task force to try to find the gasser. The police had reached a dead end, partly because of all the false alarm calls and unrelated cases being reported. To this day, no one is exactly sure who the mad gasser was, but the most likely suspect was a local man named Farley Llewellyn. Llewellyn had studied chemistry and was sort of a loner. He lived in a trailer behind his parents' general store and even had a chemistry lab inside the trailer. Now, a trailer with a chem lab in 2023 would point to a completely different thing than it did in 1944. In 1944, he was just seen as eccentric and strange, and it didn't help that he was a homosexual, something that got him shunned by society. Now, the Mattoon police knew about Farley Llewellyn, and after the first few attacks, they started watching him, but the attacks continued while he was reported as being home. So, those were either copycat attacks, mass hysteria, he was working with someone else, or he had nothing to do with it at all. One theory is that Farley's two sisters, Catherine and Florence, helped him conduct the attacks. Some historians have claimed that the entire thing was mass hysteria. Only 4 of the 26 victims saw a doctor. There was very little physical evidence, and all of the symptoms reported also coincide with symptoms of mass hysteria and anxiety. Sadly, this wasn't enough for the citizens of Mattoon. His parents placed him in a lunatic asylum later that year. So we'll never really know whether the Mad Gasser was Farley Llewellyn, his sisters, mass hysteria, or a combination of all that. What we do know is that the story is still being talked about to this day in Illinois. The internet says it's true. It's time for the part of the podcast where I call a friend. And today I am calling Jay Black. If you listen to this podcast regularly, you know Jay. He's a comedian and screenwriter. He's a regular guest and friend of the show. Good to have you back, man. How you been?
It's just nice to be the friend of a show somewhere. You hear that phrase all the time. Friend of the show. And I'm like, when am I going to have a show to be friends with? And now I do. It's Michael Kent's podcast. How
Friend
you doing,
of the
Mike?
show. It doesn't that sound? It makes the show sound so official. No, I wrote that not even thinking like that how that sounds. But yeah, man, it's good to see you. You've been working a lot. Been doing shows.
Yeah, so I've been doing a lot of shows. I started my own podcast. It's called The Internet Also Says It's True. I just take whatever you did and I do it a week later.
That's like The Price is Right, $1. You got me.
I started my own podcast that is a TV show review podcast that I do with my friends Angela Cataldi and Rhea Hughes. So that's been keeping me busy. And, doing a lot of movies. I got a movie coming out in April that I wrote and produced.
Are you allowed to tell us the name of it? Are we at that stage yet?
So it's called Her Fiance's Double Life. It'll be on Lifetime.
Okay.
It's about a fiance who has a double life, and guys, spoiler alert, it's not a pleasant one.
No.
His double life isn't doing charity work for children. His double life
like
involves murder.
Should be on A&E or something.
Yeah, well, it's a lot. I mean, listen, it's a very good one. Everybody in it is super duper hot. So if you're a Midwestern housewife looking for some soft core to get you through the weekend, I'm here for you. So come check out that movie.
All right. So did you cast yourself as the protagonist?
No. Mike, look at me. I am falling apart. I'm going to be starring in a true life drama about whatever disease they diagnose me with in the next year, because it's got to be something.
You're going to be in the true life drama of East Palestine, Ohio. You're going to be one of the citizens.
We saved on makeup. He already looks like he's falling apart. Look at this guy.
I'm claiming it here and now on this podcast. The title for that film is Railroaded. It's 100% perfect. Copyrighted right there. Done. In perpetuity.
All right, I'm writing it down.
We've got a week. Actually, this podcast comes out in the beginning of March on the 6th. So if someone beats me to it, I'm screwed. Although I have used that joke with my wife at least 4 times, so she can attest.
Well, and here's the thing with the Trump era deregulation, there's a chance by March 6th, 7 or 8 more derailments will have happened. So people are going to be like, wait, which one was this that he's talking about?
And then Railroaded will be like, the... Who's the guy from Flint, Michigan that does the documentaries? Michael Moore. Michael Moore. That'll be like a Michael Moore style called Railroaded. It'll be about all of the railroad accidents, not just the one.
Let's do a serialized podcast, you and me trying to get to the bottom of it. And at the end, it's just what we thought in the first episode.
I am down. I have been wanting to do a serialized podcast so bad, and I haven't been able to. Yes, I have one story in mind, a true crime story from my hometown of Urbana, Ohio, that happened in my last year living in Urbana. 2 kids got murdered, and the prosecutor, the prosecutor in the case is the guy that lives in the house that I grew up in. So I have an in there.
Wow. And
the sheriff in the case, who worked the case, is somehow distantly related to me. I know him, but he lives down in Florida, retired. I don't know if I could get him to talk about it and all that, So, but it's a great story. It's not a great story. I mean, it's a terrible story, but it's a thrilling story. I just like the idea of like a dramatic serialized podcast, because I have really enjoyed listening to a few of those.
I have made it clear in all of my after death documents that no one is to serialize my death should I die under circumstances that require such a thing.
Yeah, my friend Lance Thompson, who you may know, he's been a guest on this show a couple times.
Yeah,
he's very much. He and I not argue about this, but he's very anti true crime because he sees it as exploitation and smut. Because he has sort of a true crime story that's happened in his family, and he's seen it from that perspective of the, being the exploited.
I don't really have an issue with that. Honestly, if there is a story that people are interested in, I don't know if it's exploitation to tell that story. I just think, and I've said this for years, when I'm dead, I won't care.
Yeah.
So even if I die, I stopped and there was a guy who had a couch he was trying to move, and I said, I'll help you out. And then 9 months later, my head was found on the shore of Lake Michigan, and somebody goes, okay, we got the hook for the podcast. I just want my family to know I don't care. I'm dead. Honestly, either I'm in the abyss or I'm in paradise. Either way, I don't care what happened when I was alive. None of it matters.
No, but you want your kids to have the the fortune made from the movie, right?
So Mike, here's the thing. And this is when I die. This is why I think that there is no such thing as ghosts. Because if a ghost existed, all a ghost would ever try to do was try to get you to die. Right? If there was an afterlife that
What do you mean, out of loneliness, or come hang out with me?
No, because if there's a heaven, right? Haven't you ever gone to Cancun and then called your friends and go oh my God, you got to go to Cancun. It's awesome. Ghosts should not be saying
That's true.
You gave the wrong watch to my grandchild. The ghost should be you should totally kill yourself. We have a buffet in heaven. It's awesome.
That's a good point. Penn Jillette has a book about how, if you're a Christian in the truest sense of the word, and you meet me, who is an atheist, it should be everything you do to try to evangelize toward or proselytize toward me.
Yeah,
that is you caring. And if you are a Christian talking to an atheist and you don't proselytize, that's like saying that's like thumbing your nose at this person. I don't want you to have what I'm going to have. And
it's I went on a great vacation. Where'd you go? Can't tell you.
Yeah.
You got to tell me. Now,
Gatekeeping Heaven is the name of this book that you're going to write.
Right. If I die and there's a heaven, I won't care what happens, because guess what? My kids are going to die and join me. So what do I care what they do for 70 piddling years on Earth? You got to turn it in the afterlife. Do I care if you're poor or upset? No, you're going to join me in the afterlife. And if there's nothing, I also don't care, because I don't exist anymore. Yeah. I'm scot-free. After I'm dead, I don't care. You don't have to worry about me. Michael, I'll be dead probably within 2 years. You don't have to worry about me. Just please rerun this podcast and be well, Jay would have wanted us to talk about him.
Two things. A, I hope you're not dead in 2 years.
If I make it 2 years.
If nothing else, because you're the only person that says yes to this podcast, and I might still be doing this show, and I'll need guests. And secondly, I tend to think of the afterlife as how I think of the before life, right? I anticipate my afterlife being the exact same as the way my life was before I was born, and that is, it doesn't exist. It's nothing, and
right.
I didn't care about it then, and I won't care about it after, and for the same reason, I won't be around.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about it.
There's a small possibility, and I honestly think that this is more probable than floating on a cloud with a harp, that I wake up in a simulator and I look at my score and it's not very good. I get up and I'm
I got a 40.
You know what? Put me back in. Let's run this again.
I'd be pretty cool, being rebirthed as one of my dogs too. That'd be pretty, or anyone's dog. That'd be pretty great.
Listen, if we had that technology, we're all coming back as animals to do weird sex stuff. That's it. We're just coming back.
Let's get into the podcast.
Yeah.
So for this first question, we are going to play for a joke, and if you get it wrong, you got to tell me a joke. Here is your question. In the mid-1940s, the town of Mattoon, Illinois, was the site of which one of these attacks? A man went around gassing people and became known as the Mad Gasser of Mattoon. B, a group of anti-government militiamen barraged themselves in a diner and called themselves the Free Men of Mattoon. Or C, a swarm of bees terrorized the town, which the news called the Killer Bees of Mattoon.
See, I want to say bees, but
not the letter B. B,
no,
bees.
The bees.
Yeah.
But I feel like I went through a bee phase in my childhood where I looked up a lot about killer bees because it was. You got to understand, I'm a Gen Xer. We grew up with a lot of weird fears. One of them being that killer bees were on their way.
Yeah.
I think I would have known about that.
Right.
So
killer bees was just above quicksand on our list.
Yes, killer bees, quicksand, and the worst was when you would get in the quicksand and it was filled with killer bees.
Yes.
That was like the one you didn't want to fall into.
Couldn't run away.
But knowing what I know about the America that I have lived in the last 2 years, I think that there's a high probability that there was a group of militiamen that tried to take over a town, and it never got reported, at least that I learned about it, because it happens so often in this country. So I'm going to go B, the militiamen of Mattoon, or what the free men of Mattoon is my answer.
This podcast wouldn't be a podcast if we chose the answers that were the most probable. So the answer is A. A man went around gassing people and became known as the Mad Gasser of Mattoon.
I'm surprised that didn't enter into the public lexicon where
in my opinion, and I'm expressing this here for the first time in this podcast, I think the only reason that this is a story that people talk about is because of that title, The Mad Gasser of Mattoon, because there's no, okay, so I'm taking a little bit of liberty by saying a man went around gassing people. They think that possibly a man went around gassing people, but for several weeks in 1944, people started complaining of this really strong smell to the point where they were going to the doctor. Some people were becoming temporarily paralyzed, coughing, vomiting, passing out for 2 weeks, right, all smelling this really strong chemical smell. And they do think possibly it was this one guy who was like a loner who lived in a shack or lived in a trailer behind his parents' store and had a chemical lab in the trailer. The Mad Gasser attacks of Mattoon.
And that man went on to form 4chan. Yeah. People don't know that.
Very likely.
He said, I'm gonna turn this into a lifestyle. Well, all right, I owe you a joke.
Yeah, man.
All right, here's my joke. I got a good joke for you. Couple, they're about to have sex for the first time. They start kissing. It's starting to get hot. And they're fumbling, taking off their clothes. Guy takes his pants off. Girl goes, oh, what's going on with your knees, man? And he goes, oh, no, I have measles. And the lady goes, you mean you have measles? And he goes, no, measles. It only affects my knees. I'm like, all right. So they continue kissing and gets a little hotter. Guy takes his socks off. And she goes, oh, my goodness, what's going on with your feet? And he goes, oh, I have polio. And she goes, you mean polio? And he goes, no, polio. It only affects my toes. All right. So they're kissing a little bit more, getting really into it. She takes his underpants off, and she goes, wait. Before you tell me, I got it. Smallcocks. You can't see me unless you're on Patreon, but I'm raising my arms in a V like Pearl Jam's Jeremy.
It is fantastic. Oh, well, I'm glad that you spoke in class today. I
gnashed my teeth and bit the recess lady's chest. How could you forget, Michael?
My God, that's high school. That song is high school for me. I looked one up too for this week. What did one Egyptian say to the other when they farted at the same time?
What?
Looks like we've got a Tutankhamun.
Ah!
Oh boy. So, that was actually a really good joke that you told this week. That's one of the better ones we've had in a while.
You're welcome, America.
This is what you get when you book comedians on the podcast. Let's move on. Question 2. For this question, we're going to play for $7 billion. Oh,
nice. I could use that.
35 fictional internet points, whichever is more accessible.
Oh, all right. Well, I guess it depends on whether or not you work for the Fed.
Yeah, that's true. But I know it's true for me. Okay. Which one of these is a real nickname for the city of Mattoon, Illinois? By the way, have you been to Mattoon? There is Lakeland College there.
I have performed at Lakeland College in Illinois, so I suppose I have been to Mattoon.
I believe it's a nooner. I believe they do a noon show there. I remember there was a Subway in the Student Activities Center, or in the Student Center.
Yeah. No, and I will say that having recently just done 2 nooners at Moraine Park College, I I was explaining to somebody, because I think people have an idea of what our comedy life is or our magic life is, and they were like, "Wait, where are you?" And I was like, "Wisconsin." "Where are you performing?" "In a cafeteria at 11:30 a.m." to people that didn't know I was coming.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Wait, and they pay you for this?" And it's like, actually, quite well. Yes.
Well, that's the only reason I'm doing this.
Right. It's not out of my love for shouting jokes at uninterested college students.
My God, I did 2 nooners late last year, and both of them were, look, the students that came loved it, right? Like the students that were there and paying attention loved it. But it is so difficult to get people there, especially right now when college students are just full of apathy. And and B, it's even before the pandemic, it was a hard sell. Like they just want to eat lunch and play Magic the Gathering or whatever they're doing on their tables. Some of them are literally studying, and you're performing and playing music and everything else. And it's a tough gig.
And it's that thing where it's like, even if you were like doing a show that they came to and you weren't good, they would give you more respect than the guy who is literally shouting at them while they're trying to eat. Like that's your job, is like at what point the only difference between me and like an unhoused person who broke into the college and started ranting is that I'm getting paid to be there. That's it.
It's true. It's true. Okay, well, we went off on a little side quest there, but one of these is only one of these is a real nickname for Mattoon, Illinois. Okay. The sneaker capital of the Midwest. B, the bagel capital of the world. Or C,
not a chance.
C, the chicken capital of Illinois.
I'm tempted to say B, because that would be something an idiot would do. He's like, where it's like, we got to get an identity for our town. Let's just claim. That's like some Trump level. Like, let's just say I have the biggest building. I'll just say that this town in Illinois makes the best bagels in the world. I'm going B. Let's just go B.
The answer is B. They claim to be the bagel capital of the world. Now, despite this nickname, there is a actual place that probably has more claim. Monticello, New York claims that they're the bagel capital of the world because they're the birthplace of the bagel.
Yeah.
And New York makes a little bit more sense than Illinois.
Just use this small litmus test. Has anybody in the history of the world said, "Oh, you're going to Illinois, you must try the bagel"?
No, the answer is no. So apparently they once claimed to have the largest bagel factory in this town. I don't know if that was true, but both cities still to this day celebrate an annual bagel festival in the summer. So they claim to be the bagel capital of the world in Mattoon, Illinois, home of the Mad Gasser.
Well, we know what happened. Everybody got brain damage from the Mad Gasser in the 40s.
Yeah, and they were just like
they couldn't taste anymore.
They're eating McDonald's, saying this is an amazing bagel.
This McGriddle's the best bagel I've ever had.
All right, question 3. You're one for 2 so far. You're 1-1. Yeah. Question 3. For this question, we're going to play for the sticker. The internet says it's true sticker. They're 3 inches, they're square, and they're sticky. One of these gases can kill you if you inhaled it. Only one of these. Which one of these gases can kill you if inhaled? A, xenon, B, phosgene, or C, argon?
Well, let's see. They put xenon in lights, right? Phosgene sounds made up. That sounds like genes that Bob Fosse would endorse. When I'm dancing, nothing gets between me and my phosgenes. Argon, both xenon and argon are noble gases and they're inert. So I'm just, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go argon. I'm feeling argon.
The answer, phosgene. The Bob Fosse gene is extremely poisonous and was used as a chemical weapon during World War I. It killed 85,000 people. And it is a pulmonary irritant, quickly filled enemy trenches due to it being a heavy gas. So,
oh boy,
yeah,
that's why I have asthma, and that's like the way I at least want to die is through like pulmonary things. Like, I would ask politely if they could just mortar me if I was in World War One. Like
So-
I'd pop up over the trench and be like, "Are you doing the gas or the mortar? Could you do the mortar?
Please, yeah, make
I'm
it
fine
quick.
with either. You can kill me. I just don't want to die from pulmonary stuff."
Now, so COVID was probably pretty frightening for you then with asthma.
Way frightening.
Yeah.
So I have asthma my whole life. I know what it's like to lay in a bed and wheeze and not be able to like feel like you're catching your breath. It's a terrible feeling.
Oof.
And the idea, it's why I never smoked. The idea that that's how you go, that just keeps getting worse and worse and it doesn't get any better. That was just super frightening. So, even when people were like, "Oh, it's just the flu," the flu can be deadly. I don't want the flu either.
Yeah, pneumonia sucks.
So you need breathing. So, and I understand there are some people that don't have the issues that I've had, and I just would love to have that feeling that you can get air whenever you want it, and you don't have to take a puffer sometimes to make it so that you can breathe.
Now, the very first COVID death I heard of that was like someone I knew was a guy who's like a great supporter of my show. He comes to see my show whenever I do things in town, and his son had asthma and died, and that was like the exacerbating thing. And I was like, oh my God, and he was like my age, so super scary. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we're past the worst of that, and now does that ever affect you when you're performing, like when you're doing a comedy show? Do you have trouble getting air? Yeah.
So now that I'm starting back at the gym. I actually got a membership. So tomorrow's the day one, Michael. So you're seeing me at my absolute nadir.
You told me last time you were on that during the pandemic you got hot.
Yeah, I got hot and then I got unhot, and I want to re-hot before 50. I just want to spend my last few years at 40 as hot.
Yeah.
So occasionally, especially when I'm carrying extra weight, like I'll lose my breath a little bit, like going up the steps, and it makes you feel like super out of shape. But I got to remember, if I don't take my asthma medicine before I go on stage, there's a chance that like I'm trying to re-regulate my breath while I'm on stage, and it takes a few minutes to compensate for that.
Sure.
So yeah,
we have a new advertiser on the podcast. Is a book called The Power of the Streak, and she talks about going from that thing where you're like, I need to work out, which is where I am right now. Like I know I want to work out, to actually like doing it and coming up with whatever routine is going to be pragmatic and work for you. So
you got to do it. Every day.
Yeah. All right, man, let's move on to question 4. So far, you are 1 for 3. And for this one, we're going to play for permission to release the memory of something that bothers you from the past. So if you get it right, I will personally grant you permission to stop carrying that around in your head, whatever it might be. It's something that if you want to tell us, you can tell us. If not,
good.
It's just
I got
yours.
something good.
Okay,
I got
good.
something bubbling. Yeah.
Which one of these is really a law in the state of Illinois today in 2023? A, it's illegal to put hats on dogs. B, it's illegal to give a lit cigar to a dog. Or C, it's illegal to go swimming in a pool if a dog is also in the pool.
Well, C sounds like something that you could actually believe someone came up with at some point. So it obviously can't be that because it's reasonable. So I'll go with the hat one.
The hat?
You can't put a hat in a dog. That sounds like some sort of, like Christian thing that happened in the 1800s or something.
It would be amazing if you knew this. Too bad. It is giving a lit cigar to a dog, which is incredibly illegal in the state of Illinois. The law also applies to cats and any other household domesticated animal. So,
I guess that makes sense. I mean, as an asthmatic, I could see there's probably like a lot of asthma dogs that have asthma, so you don't want to exacerbate the asthma. I get that.
I once wanted to do a series, like a whole season of this podcast that was dumb laws from every state.
Well, yeah, and now that the Republicans are in power in a lot of those states, they're multiplying.
They're coming back. Yeah, some of these ones that went away are coming back. So these like old, antiquated, stupid things, and the goal, if I did that, would be to get someone from each state on for that episode. Cool. Yeah. But then I thought about like the logistics of doing that is a nightmare.
A lot of logistics. It's just Well, it's one of those things where, like, as a performer, like if you show up at a comedy club, say, and there's like a rule where they go like, you can drink whatever you want, but like you can't have any whiskey more than 3 whiskeys. And it's like a real like specific rule. And you're like, there's a comic here who had 5 whiskeys and like beat up a police horse, right?
That rule
like,
has someone's name attached to it. That's the Jake rule or whatever it might be. Yeah. That we call that the Dustin Diamond rule.
At some point,
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone there.
Somebody's walking around going, "Hey, does your dog want some cigar?" And people are like, "No, thank you." And they're like, "No, he does." And just shoved a cigar in the dog's mouth.
Yeah.
And eventually they were like, "We gotta take care of this. This is insane.
This is happening."
And
way
every
too
time
much.
the cops would show, the cops would show up and they'd be like, "Listen, there's no law on the books. If a guy wants to shove a lit cigar into an unwilling dog's mouth, he has full right to do that." And then they were like, "Well, get the town council together. We need to fix this problem."
That's probably exactly what happened. There were some city-specific dumb laws in Illinois, but none of them that I found in Mattoon. So if they are on the books in Mattoon, I didn't find them. Well, you've done incredibly poor in this podcast so far, Jay. You are 1 for 4. But you can make it all up with this next one. And this one's like a double or nothing thing. This one's for all the marbles. And if you get it right, I'm happy to have you back. What is the most interesting thing that you have learned this week?
So it's a thing that I sort of relearned. I got a good one, which is, when they make whiskey, I mentioned whiskey earlier. I have whiskey on the mind. 2% of it evaporates. Right. Okay. And they call that the angel's share of the whiskey.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah. So that part I sort of relearned. The second part that I learned is that if you ever go to like the Jack Daniel's distillery or Maker's Mark distillery or any of that, it looks like all of the signs and the barrels have been scorched with black. And you're like, oh, is that part of the process of like, you need to have like scorched wood? Like, why is that? It's not scorching at all. It is a fungus that is fed by the angel's share. Whoa. When that whiskey evaporates, a fungus eats that. It eats the alcohol that gets evaporated into the air, which is why all distilleries look like they're surrounded by burnt wood, because it's a black fungus that grows on the wood. And I thought to myself, is there not a better metaphor for how we see alcohol?
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, that alcohol disappeared. I guess the angels wanted it. And nope, it was a fungus that was growing on all the wood around you. It is, the angels had nothing to do with it. It was just a fungus growing on you. And I thought to myself, that's whiskey in a nutshell, and a pretty good metaphor for my drinking days.
That is correct. I was at the Maker's Mark distillery, and I don't remember necessarily seeing that. I mean, everything's dark in those, they store these barrels.
Well, so I will say the one thing I did read about Maker's Mark is that they go with black wood on purpose so that you don't see the fungus.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they did show us, like,
although I will say that was in a Reddit reply. So that also could be completely manufactured. Well, the internet says it's true. So it's in keeping with the,
you'll know pretty quickly if a Reddit reply is wrong, because then there'll be 20 other replies just berating the person and downvotes and everything else. Yeah, man.
By the way, just as a side, Michael, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Is it me, or is Reddit the last sort of bastion of the internet that we remembered from like 15 years ago?
I feel that way too. Yeah. Cause like that. Remember Dig? There was DIGG Dig, and Reddit was like similar to Dig, and Reddit does.
It was the knockoff of Dig.
Yeah, it still feels like the old internet, and I'm always amazed when I go to it that it's still there. There's a magic website like this too. The magicians refer to it as like the green monster or whatever, because it's like green like old style message boards, and people still post on it. And as bad as it is, it's horrible. And as bad as it is, it's the best way to get like a really quick review, because magic is such a guarded, sheltered art form. It's the best way to find the truth about a product from people who are actually using it, and to find like the latest, greatest news. And it is, I mean, it's
and you
like
have to be a member?
Yeah. You have to sign up, but anyone can sign up. I mean, there's no like, you don't have to be a magician to get a membership. You just sign up. There is no like litmus test for it. You know what I mean? Anyone can go on there and just flame the magicians. but it is a legitimately 1998 style website. Like, I mean, it is exactly like what we remembered. And it hasn't changed since its inception.
The ethos of those days, where it's like, you know, you actually got clout by knowing stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you would post it, you'd go to like a iMac web forum and you'd be like, hey, something's wrong with my G3 iMac. I need help. And then like the reply that actually fixed the problem was the one where everybody was like, congratulations, not the one that said, hey, cuck, real men don't need to have their computers fixed. They just use their alpha energy to make them work again, which would get like 700,000 upvotes on Twitter. Or
this
whatever.
Is true. It's an amazing diagnosis. That's really accurate. We've lost the age of expertise is gone. It's
right. Or at least,
and like that guy who was writing was Steve Wozniak, and they didn't know that, you know, like they didn't care. This is the Anthony Fauci of on Twitter, you know, and people saying like, I just miss when like the person who understood your problem and tried to fix it was the one that got the glory, not the person who knew how to. And listen, I'm trying to get everybody on Twitter to you know, punch their buttons for me in the other way. And it's not based on how much I know. It's how snarky I can be to Republicans. Yeah.
And they go, oh, that guy's really funny, I'm going to follow him. But I'm not adding anything to the discourse.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you know.
But your replies are always really funny. Go follow Jay Black on Twitter. It's Jay Black is funny on Twitter.
Yes,
and what's your website? Is it Jay Black Comedy?
It's jayblack.tv, JAYBLECK.tv. I'm putting out videos and stuff on the TikTok and the whatnot. Yeah. No comparison to what Michael Kent's doing. But thanks, if I could just get a small crumble of your audience to come over and like all of my videos, that would be awesome too. But you can find all that from the website, jayblack.tv.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for coming back on the show, man. I really appreciate having you here.
Anytime. Look at me. My family's in the other room. They can't bother me. I might just sit here and pretend to be on a podcast for the next 5 hours so that no one comes back in. Guys, I don't know. He's like a Joe Rogan. He's the Joe Rogan of magician podcasters. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, that's all for this week. Thank you so much to Jay Black for being my guest. Here's a citizen of Mattoon who's been gassed with helium. Also, he's British.
Thank you for listening to The Internet Says It's True. To listen to episodes ad-free and a week early, support us on Patreon. You can do that at patreon.com/Michael Kent. If you learned something just now that you didn't already know, go to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review with 5 stars and a few words. That helps us a ton, because that's how the algorithm works. I don't know what an algorithm is, but just do it. See you next week for a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True!
The Internet Says It's True would like to thank the Patreon subscribers whose monthly contributions help to make the show possible. Dallas Ray, Sean Brown, Bryce Swanson, Eugene Anderson, Matt McVeigh, Jim Martin, Joanne Martin, the show's official Emperor Kick Track. The show is written and produced by me, Michael Kent. The theme song is by Finite Music Forge. All audio clips in this episode are used for education and commentary and used under Fair Use Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107. You can listen to past episodes by searching for The Internet Says It's True wherever you get your podcasts, and you can see bonus content at patreon.com/Michael Kent.